It seems the time has finally come upon us. December 10th would be known as the day that would change gaming history forever. On this day, 26 years ago, id Software released the father of first-person shooters, the graciously gory, goon-gutting game known simply as Doom. I don't think it's even a question whether Doom's good or not, so rather than lead you in with a question, I'm just gonna dive right into it. Being the sequel to Wolfenstein 3D, much of its design philosophy is a bit similar. Obviously, for starters, it's a first-person shooter, and enemies can turn their backs to you like in the PC version. There's also a sound system where they can hear you from certain distances and circumstances. You start out with a melee weapon and a pistol before moving on to bigger and badder things, the pistol and chain gun even sharing the same ammo, and of course you collect keys and can go hunting for secrets. As to be expected though, Doom improved the formula in some insanely significant ways. From a gameplay perspective, the most notable is that there's now full height elevation. Well, some have described Doom's engine as not being truly 3D, which kind of makes sense because it's only limited to one floor and one ceiling in any one space. The ability to move up and down at least gave it fully three-dimensional movement in a sense. It's certainly pretty easy to forget that it's not truly polygonal 3D when you're walking upstairs or hitching an elevator ride. The sheer amount of variety has also been pumped up exponentially since Wolfenstein 3D. While Wolfenstein 3D had a few projectile enemies, it was mostly hit scans and dogs. Doom not only has hit scan and close range enemies, but it also has flying enemies, and one of them even shoots itself at you like a bullet. The Sergeant's shotgun also has spread, something that Wolfenstein 3D obviously lacked the capability to do. The enemies include former humans, former sergeants, imps, pinkies, lost souls, cacodemons, barons of hell, spider mastermind, and cyberdemon. While Doom 2 would later go on to greatly expand upon this, even the original Doom has a good amount of baddie types to work with, even if the Baron is kind of just an upgraded version of the imp. As I've also touched upon in my Quake 2 review, Doom has very recognizable enemies with completely different shapes and color palettes. Unlike, more modern war shooters where the enemies look very similar to one another, you can tell what you're fighting in Doom at a glance. This is very good, considering the original Doom had a pitiful 320 by 240 screen resolution to work with. Perhaps the one thing that hasn't aged quite so gracefully is the AI's pathfinding. They'll generally try to go straight towards you, deviating around a little bit to look for openings, but they'll generally just be running into a wall if there's one between you and them. Still, this is a game from 1993. It's not like modern pathfinding was feasible on CPUs back then. The team had to axe True Color for the same reason. This was way before dedicated hardware, so the CPU had to do pretty much 100% of the work. On the plus side, the game basically fluctuates through a list of numbers for all actions, so it gives the illusion of randomness. This allows each play to feel just a little bit different while also being consistent enough that playback demos don't have wildly different things happening to them each time. And of course your own arsenal is nothing to sneeze at either. Well, mostly. Your starter pistol quite frankly sucks for the most part, and you'll want to get it replaced as quickly as possible. The fist is basically your yeah good luck with that buddy weapon, but unlike the pistol, it can be situationally useful if you happen to find a berserk pack. This gives it a nice risk versus reward system where your fists are practically as strong as the super shotgun from Doom 2, but if you want to take on anything besides pinkies, you'll have to risk getting hit in retaliation. Then there's also the chainsaw, which fires very fast and also saps health equally fast. This can be useful against some enemies like the cacodemons if you can keep them stun locked, but it probably won't do against most enemies since they'll still be able to fire at you. After that is arguably the most useful weapon in the game, the humble shotgun. While obviously not the most powerful, it packs a decent punch against just about everything but the bosses, and shells tend to be very plentiful. Just don't distance yourself too far. While it has a much lower spread than the super shotgun from Doom 2, it still does have a spread. The chain gun is basically what you'll be replacing the pistol with as soon as you can possibly get it. It uses the same ammo as the pistol, just that it shoots a lot faster. This makes it great for mowing down enemies and just clearing out a room. Against zombie enemies or just stun-locking cacodemons, it's a great tool to go with. Next up is the rocket launcher, a great choice for Baron since it's a 5-shot kill. I don't think I have to tell you that it follows the exact logic of the shotgun though, and that you don't want to fire it too close unless you want to get exploded by your own rounds. Coming up next is a plasma rifle, which uses the pretty rare cell, so don't use it too often. It's great for melting through enemies and even the two bosses, so use it against something your weaker available weapon simply won't cut it with, or if you just run out of ammo. Of course, the final weapon is the big gun. This beefy weapon of pure destruction uses 40 cells per shot and absolutely devastates everything. If you know how to aim it properly, everything against a cyberdemon can go down in a single shot, and he only takes 2. However, it can be risky against a cyberdemon due to him firing at you while it's charging, but it's great for quickly taking down the spider mastermind. In general, it's also very great for taking out a crowded room really quickly if you don't mind eating up the cost in cells. Of course, even the most powerful weapons on planet Earth won't keep you alive if you can't manage your vitals. Your health comes in the form of stim packs and medkits that heal 10 and 25 health respectively, up to a maximum of 100%. But wait, there's more! If you want to go even further, there are health bonuses that only restore by 1% but cap off at a whopping 200%! Or you can just find a soul sphere that also caps off at 200% and restores a whopping 100% of health. As if that wasn't enough to keep you from dying, there's also armor in the form of armor bonuses, green armor, and blue armor. Green armor restores it to 100%, armor bonuses by 1 to 200%, and blue armor gives you a straight 200%. However, one thing to note is that green armor doesn't give you as much protection as blue armor and will get reset if you pick up one of them. If it gets set to green armor, it absorbs a third of the damage, but the blue armor absorbs half the damage. Thankfully, armor bonuses don't reset the type, but that does mean you probably shouldn't pick up greens if you still have blue protection unless you're about to run out. I mentioned the Berserk Pack earlier, although worth mentioning is that they also bring your health up to 100% instantly. There's also a variety of other power-ups in the game. Starting off strong is the Humble Light Amplification Goggles, which pumps your brightness up to full and is great for looking through extremely dark areas while they last. You can also find Radiation Suits, which allows you to go through damaging floors without taking damage, which otherwise drain your health depending on the type and if you've got armor on or not. Then there's Partial Invisibility, which makes enemies randomly miss, but this can be very much a blessing as much as a curse due to muscle memory accidentally sending you right into their projectiles. It comes in very much handy against hit scan enemies since you can't very well dodge them anyway. Computer area maps are ridiculously handy since they reveal the entire map, which can allow you to find secrets. The Humble Backpack is probably the most helpful. They permanently double your ammo, but obviously only the first time. They're still pretty handy after the first use though, because you find more ammo in them for every ammo type. And then there's the big daddy of them all, Invulnerability. While it may not have as much utility as the permanent backpack, it obviously makes you immune to all damage for the duration. If you want to be crazy and two-shot a Cyber Demon with the BFG, your best bet is to grab one of these first so they can't hurt you. You can also combine it with the Berserk Pack and just punch through skulls like Kenshiro. Omae wa Mushindeyo. NANI? Of course, you don't even have to just rely on your own abilities to win fights. The environment itself can even play a key in your victory. You can lure enemies into crusher ceilings or even just teleport on top of them, killing them instantly in a process that's simply known as telefragging. Even the mighty Cyber Demon is instantly killed by this technique. You can also use the demons against the demons so you can demon while you demon. They are straight up chaotic evil and always itching for a fight, so just make one accidentally scrape another and they'll fight to the death. With an explosive barrel, you can also make enemies of the same type normally immune to their own projectiles in fight, which I always utilize against the Baron duo and E1M8 just because it's funny. Watch out, Kitty's got claws. Catfight! You can also have up to 3 different keys to find at a certain level, not to mention switches to open doors and activate platforms, crusher ceilings, and hazardous floors you have to navigate and avoid, explosive barrels you can turn on your enemies or just cause in-species fighting, and then there are also teleporters peppered throughout the game, either one way or two way. Doom originally comes with 3 episodes, with the first one being free, but you'll obviously want the Ultimate Doom, which includes Thy Flesh Consumed. There's also John Romero's recent release, Sigil, which is basically the 5th episode, which I actually hacked into the Doom WAD to create what I affectionately call the really Ultra Doom. I haven't even really gotten into it myself, but Doom even has deathmatch multiplayer, even back in the days of limited internet reach. I know for a fact that the Super Nintendo version actually had online multiplayer too, probably making it the first online console first-person shooter. Eat your heart out, Halo and Call of Duty among others. And if all that still wasn't enough, there's also source ports and mods galore. I must admit, the default control scheme for Doom is dated to say the least. Honestly, it's like controlling a tank and good luck circle strafing. Having a modern WASD scheme and mouse aim is the best, and there's tons of map and gameplay altering mods to choose from, both old and new, so you'll never run out of things to play. There's even that one mod that's ridiculously overrated that people won't ever shut up about. I love you, Brutal Doom, I just think you're a little bit overhyped is all. Basically, Doom is a complete revolution of gameplay, and there's still a very dedicated community that's still finding new ways to exploit the engine, so you couldn't even begin to imagine the sheer amount of things you could do with it, even if you never made a single mod yourself. It's a grand old first-person shooting time, and you owe it to yourself to try it at least once. Or 10,000 times. The plot, as you should come to expect from any id Software game at the time, is really quite simple when you get down to brass tacks. From what I can understand, your guy was ordered to fire on civilians but decided to assault the douche commanding officer who gave the order, and as punishment he was sent to a military base on Phobos, one of Mars' moons. Meanwhile, the UAC was developing teleportation technology and may have accidentally opened a portal into hell. This was long before Doom 3 and Doom 2016 suggested they did it on purpose, so we can safely assume it was accidental in this case. Consequently, the Deimos moon with its base blipped out of existence entirely while the Phobos base was quickly overrun with demons. Naturally, you as the Doom guy have to fight your way through. The end of episode 1 is a very interesting way to end things, to say the very least. I know this is a 26-year-old game, but spoiler alerts, you actually die. No, seriously, you go through a teleporter and are mauled by demons, completely helpless to stop yourself from dying, and text appears explaining that you're now stuck in the shores of hell. Since the shareware version only included the first episode, this is how it ends unless you buy the full game. I'll admit, that's a pretty good way to hook you into it, having your character straight up die and end up in hell. Naturally though, all is not lost. You end up on the lost Deimos base that was swallowed up into hell and have to fight your way through it. After defeating the loathsome cyber demon, you rappel off the floating moon base and discover, to nobody's surprise, that you're now on the surface of hell itself. Seems kinda weird to be surprised by that, given that we already established that you were in hell, but sure, I guess there is plausible deniability. You defeat the Spider Mastermind after plowing your way through it, apparently the brains behind the operations, and make your way out and back to Earth. Of course, it's all another sequel hook because the demons beat you to it, and after seeing a bunny hopping innocently in the fields, you're treated to its severed head on a freaking pike. Welcome to Hell on Earth. This was obviously the lead-in for Doom 2 at the time. Now, if you have Ultimate Doom, you also have Thy Flesh Consumed, which attempts to bridge Doom 1 with Doom 2. It's kind of unnecessary since they still kind of bridge together just fine, but I guess this was their way of getting Doom to retail while providing a little extra. I just don't get why they didn't decide to add the super shotgun and the new enemies to Ultimate Doom, considering this was made after Doom 2, but okay. After fighting his way through countless demons of the war-torn Earth as well as another Spider Mastermind, Doom Guy is informed that the demonic invasion is widespread throughout the entire planet. You know, just in case it wasn't obvious. Also, that rabbit hopping along the fields was apparently Doom Guy's pet rabbit Daisy. While it's an interesting plot revelation, what was it doing out in the field in the first place? It seems very strange, but maybe it was a different rabbit and the one in the field was a red herring or something. Either way, after that, it's on to Doom 2 Hell on Earth, where you stop the invasion once and for all. As a plot, Doom does what it probably needed to do in 1993. I'll admit I'd have loved to see what could have been if Tom Hall had been allowed to use his more ambitious story, but this is still a pretty fleshed out story given most people don't even talk about Doom having a story. There's also novels based on the game, but I haven't read them and I don't think they're actually canon. What I'm basically saying is this plot gets the job done. As Carmack says, stories in a game are like stories in a certain other medium where they're expected to be in there but not very important. After the height elevation, perhaps the second biggest upgrade from Wolfenstein 3D is brightness levels. For the first time, areas can either be lit up like a Christmas tree or hauntingly dark, even to the point of being pitch black. Of course, the addition of floor and ceiling textures, actual skyboxes, and animated textures mostly used to denate hazardous material is also present, but it's the lighting that really gives Doom its unique atmosphere. It has a unique sort of color banding system where light bands off into total darkness the farther you are away from it, and even exists in relatively lit rooms. If it isn't 100% 255 bright, it'll eventually fade into darkness. This kind of system automatically gives it a lot of atmosphere and tension. It's sort of like a rudimentary type of fog system. Similarly to Wolfenstein 3D, you've also got a HUD block at the bottom with a face that denotes how much health you've got left. While there's also a percentage, your peripheral vision can more easily tell how bloodied up a face is than the exact number, so it really helps. The face will also get angry when you're shooting or you're hit, and will even look to the left or right to help you figure out where you're being hit from. It even grins when you pick up a weapon, and gets shocked when you take a ton of damage, although that one is glitched. Interestingly, the eyes also go golden when you're in God mode, regardless of how much health you actually have left. In addition to being visually distinct from one another, the enemies of Doom also have a variety of different audio clips for the most part. While not all of them are unique, probably a limitation of the storage at the time, you can generally tell when they become active and which ones are gunning for you by the sound effects. This actually makes Lost Souls a bit deviously creepy as they don't have an active sound, which sort of makes them more stalkerish than the others. The only indication that there's one on your tail is that there's a very distinct hissing sound it makes when it launches itself at you, giving you precious little time to get out of the way. On the subject of sound, the sound effects in general are also pretty good. The weapons sound appropriately beefy, and your guy will give appropriate sounds for either being hurt, either falling down a good distance or trying to open a wall, and a very audible scream if you get killed. Weapons, items, and power-ups each have their own sound, which won't really help you determine exactly which one you got, but at least it'll give you a good general idea. Naturally, the music is extremely iconic. It's been suggested and actually demonstrated that Doom heavily inspired some of its music from other bands' songs. It being in MIDI form and changed just enough probably helped avoid all legal action, so it's all good. I like how the music isn't just raw metal as people associate, but some tracks can be very atmospheric and even morbid. E1M8 straight up sounds depressing, which is actually fitting since you die at the end. It really does sound like the Doom guy's walking towards the Executioner's block if you ask me. As with gameplay, there's no shortage of mods and source port tweaking if you want something with a little more pop. Personally, I consider a hardware accelerated source port a must so that the included mouse aim doesn't warp the view, but you can also get no shortage of enhancements. GZ Doom even recently allowed things like physically based rendering, so you can make Doom look quite nice if you actually wanted to. I recommend at least getting Beautiful Doom. It enhances the game's animations without compromising the aesthetic, and it really does a lot to make the game look even more beautiful. Ultimately, the presentation of Doom is a marvel even today. While it's obviously going to appear quite dated since it's only 26 years old, it really is a massive milestone on that front. With all the things it added to the table compared to Wolfenstein 3D, it arguably did the most to evolve the first-person shooter genre into what it is today, and it's also aged much better if you ask me. What else can I say here except that Doom is simply great on all levels? And that's not to say it's absolutely perfect. No game will ever truly be perfect on all fronts, but I think Doom comes pretty damn close. It's certainly monumentally groundbreaking, and the active community around it certainly speaks for itself. If you haven't already played it, you really owe it to yourself to pay tribute to what is perhaps the most influential first-person shooter and one of the most influential games period in gaming history. I promise you that you won't be disappointed, especially if you use GZ Doom and maybe a mod or two to make an already great game look even better in a modern era. This has been my review of the original Doom. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Now go out there and rip and tear!